This is the ERP Advisor.
Today's episode, ERP Trends and Predictions Part 1, A Year in Review.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, 2025 ERP Trends and Predictions Part 1. We're so excited for you guys to be joining us once again, and me for the third year already. Shawn Windle is one of our speakers for today. Shawn is the founder and managing principal of ERP Advisors Group based in Denver, Colorado. Shawn has over 25 years of experience in the enterprise software industry, helping hundreds of clients across many industries with selecting and implementing a wide variety of enterprise solutions. His podcast, The ERP Advisor, has dozens of episodes with thousands of downloads and is featured on prominent podcast platforms such as Apple and Spotify. And then Rebekah McCabe, I'm the other guest joining you guys for today. You know me as your host, but today I will be contributing to the conversation. I am the digital marketing manager on our team here at ERP Advisors Group, and I am also the host of the wildly successful ERP Minute, if I do say so myself. And on today's call, Shawn and I will highlight the past year of ERP by evaluating major headlines, market trends, and exciting innovations that emerged in 2024. Also, I would like to point out that we're trying something a little bit different today. We are going to have some questions pop up over the course of the webinar, so your participation is greatly appreciated. This will help us not only cater the content more to you, but just also to make sure that our content is up to par and doing everything that it can to make sure that all of you are happy with what we're delivering. So there's going to be one that pops up on your screen right now, but Shawn and I are going to dive into it while you guys have a chance to look that over. So welcome, Shawn. Thank you so much for joining me.
Good. Thank you, Rebekah, again, and the team for setting everything up, and excited to go.
Wonderful. Yeah, I know it's been a crazy year, I think, for all of us, and there's going to be a lot of things for us to talk about beyond ERP that affected the year and what we saw. So really excited, and let's just dive in. So 2024 was full of lots of major headlines, especially when it came to AI, like I mentioned. But as we're getting into it, Shawn, what were the major ERP trends that you saw in 2024?
2024 was I think it's a transition year, to be totally honest with you. I did, although I had to do this before the event. In 2024, several key trends characterized the enterprise resource planning ERP landscape. Cloud-based ERP solutions, integration with AI and machine learning, mobile ERP, enhanced user experience, integration with IoT, two-tier ERP, blah, 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 blah. We're going to put, I love you, Grok. I love you, but we're going to put the AI aside and actually have a real conversation here. But I mentioned that only because that's why 2024 was this, again, I think a continuation of a transition from organizations. I'll just say organizations, right? We work with for-profit, nonprofit, all kinds of, quasi-government agencies, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll just call them organizations. But these are people also. They're like, oh my gosh, we got to change our ERP. So you have this kind of confluence of coming out of COVID. We got to stop talking about that with, oh my gosh, we got to get, everything remote and in the cloud, where all of that got taken care of coming in, I think, to 2024. Then we had another trend of some kind of legacy industries, if you will, that margins went up. So we saw a lot of building supply, a lot of distributors. We saw a lot of food and beverage companies, construction companies that, are typically maybe not exactly the fastest technology adopters. They're ready to adopt new technology. So they've started to really kind of come on the fold in a whole new level. But probably the other thing, though, in terms of transition, again, that's why I showed you, is AI. I think 2024, actually, I should say in 2023, we talked a lot about AI, but it was more of like, you really need to keep your attention on and see what's really going to happen. 2024 was the year when all the billionaires were like, we're in, we are all in, and they keep shoveling cash. Literally, I think they get the cash out of whatever bank. We won't go into the monetary systems. They get it out of there and they shovel it into the data centers. Fortunately, we have some clients that build data centers and other services around data centers. They're killing it right now. Yeah. But you see this amount of computing processing about to come online that we've never had before, but it's not there yet. So the vendors, this has given the vendors time to kind of rethink, okay, how do we really rewrite apps that we can take care of not just the large language models and full data sets, but like really do some processing that, maybe we've never had to do before or couldn't do before. So it's a change of mindset, I think, that the developers are going through across a lot of the ERPs. Which is pretty interesting, actually. I'm super excited about that because I think the promise of enterprise software. I mean, we've been doing it for 50 years. I still don't think we've quite arrived, to be honest with you. I think a lot of that is going to become apparent with some of the work that the new administration is going to do around this Doge stuff. We don't want to get all political and everything, but the inefficiencies that are in our institutions and in a lot of large organizations and even smaller companies that haven't made this transition yet around enterprise software is significant. It's gargantuan. So anyway, I think a 2024 year as a year of transition. Of course, there's been lots of moves, lots of companies, organizations going from on-prem into cloud, right? Although that's slowing down. We're going to talk about that here, I think, a little bit. But I think we're getting ready for kind of the next big wave. And I think of all the waves that I've experienced, I'm super excited for this one because, again, like I said, when we're doing needs analysis for our clients and we're saying, oh, here's all the wonderful things you can do with technology, it's true, but man, it's hard. I mean, yeah, we can automate procure to pay process by having optical character recognition for vendor bills get scanned and it goes in and then route for approval. But setting even that up is kind of hard. Much less, oh, this person's out of town and I looked at the calendar and saw that, so I got to get it to this person, or it's this amount. And it's for this department, so it should go to this person. There's a lot of hard coding, a lot of development that's happening that, AI makes that a lot more. The promise of being able to actually automate those processes is we're almost there. So I don't know. That's what I'd say for 2024. We had a great year. I think it was a great year for our firm. We grew a little. I'm not going to get into that I wish was more, but it's okay. It's good. We're going through a lot of changes, I think, as a firm too, to keep track or just keep up with the market. We're investing in our marketing and everything. But I think across our clients, the things that I continued to see as it came to enterprise software was more willingness for sure to invest even in technology again in some of these industries that weren't really willing to do it in the past. And I did not get that from Grok.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Yeah, I mean,
What do you
it's a
think?
lot.
Yeah. Well, from the
Oh,
news and some of those other things, what do you think came up in 2024?
yeah, there continued to be, I know last year we did see a lot of industry specific investment, and I think that continued into 2024. That was really our prediction. We thought lots of the vendors were going to orient their services that way, and they did. Did it go? We'll talk about this a little bit later, specific industries, but did it go exactly the way that we thought it was going to? Not really. And I think part of that shift was, as much as we're not going to get into politics, anything like that, when you have an election year, when you have things that are
Mhm.
changing, some of those trends that you can normally rely on to make predictions or figure out what's going to be going forward can't be relied on as much because companies are concerned about where policies are going to go. They're unsure about what steps they need to take forward. And I'm sure you're going to talk a little bit about that in our next question, which I will lead into, which 2024 saw less growth in ERP overall than previous years. I mean, we'd been pouring into how much growth these vendors have been seeing. And the financial results too just weren't the same, the growth year over year. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the like we've talked about a lot, there was still growth, but it wasn't at almost these like neck breaking paces that are hard for everybody to keep up with. I mean, that's frankly why we saw some vendors who had no mentioning of names that still had revenue pressure to increase their rates, to increase their subscription fees, which the market did not like, especially for renewals.
Right.
We and frankly, some of the more emerging vendors, I think, were at the right place at the right time to take advantage of some customers that were, I mean, I can say this, they're pretty pissed off when their numbers went through the roof on their renewal. Like, whoa, I got the same software and it is going up how much? I'm not doing this, right? So we saw some of the other vendors take a little market share from that. which, it's hard to switch ERPs though. So you have to kind of keep it all in balance. But so that was really driven from less net new customers moving on to these ERP platforms. I think across the board with most of the vendors that we worked with, but there was still percentage growth, but it just wasn't as crazy as the last several years, which I think is actually better because now I believe, I mean, you and I talk about this a lot when we look at some of these software vendors and their profit margins, that they have the ability to invest in their products significant. These, to sell another instance of a solution, I'm sorry, but the additional cost on that is almost zero. So it's like 100% profit. Now, yes, there's scale and we got to keep the data centers and the people, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But still, you've got really good margin software vendors, which gives you more responsibility to invest in product. And so I think that, again, transitioning through 2024, I think our software vendors are figuring out the right models for development. I mean, not to mention one of the most impacted areas with AI, which is very real, is software development. Build me a class that does this in, Python. Oh my gosh, it just got written, right? Now the developers can focus on how do we take that procure to pay process and really build it at that next level. So anyway, so I think there was growth. It was stalled. I think you covered that in most of the ERP minutes because we cover the announcements, the earnings announcements. There was still significant profit, just not at the percent of growth that we had seen before. But what's interesting to me, going back to trends though, is that the amount of companies, organizations that are running on legacy software solutions, those that are coming close to the days of sayonara or sunsetting, or they've pushed the date several times now, and we're all like, okay, SAP, is this really the date? This is the date, right? They're starting to get more firm on not moving some of those sunset dates. So you've still got, I still think the majority of organizations out there are on legacy solutions over, say, next generation, cloud-based only. So there's just a monstrous amount of demand that's so pent up. And I actually feel like, we've had huge growth through COVID. I mean, it was like a little bit, and then it went, whoa, through the roof, right? Now it's gone down a little bit, but still growing. But I think as some of these AI solutions come online, I think again we'll see the companies say and organizations say, you know what, now I'm ready. I'm tired of sitting on the, on the outskirts. I'm ready to go all in because I have to have an AI strategy with my enterprise software. I don't even know what that is. That's fine. They don't have to, but their vendors do, right? We rely a lot on the vendors to deliver things that we don't even know are in there. I mean, we do, but most of our clients don't have a clue. So, I think with a little bit of slowed growth, still lots of profit, lots of ability to develop, and the ability to develop is incrementally improving because of automation, because of AI. I'm like, yeah, this is exciting. And the other factor that's coming in too, and we heard this from several economics specialists late last year, was this change in demographics of the workforce around the world. Like we're talking global, where we have a lot of people in the work world that are looking at real retirement, right? Or cutting back. Maybe like my dad, he was an attorney and now he works with a nonprofit in San Francisco. They use Salesforce and they're documenting all the services that are available for vets that vets can go to, right? So he's hanging out at home, working part-time, doing that, right? So I think that is planned for 2030. Their productivity and the ability of the overall economy will shrink, but we can keep up with that with automation, but we only have like 5 years. So that gets into more of the future and what to expect. But the bottom line is, I think, we were growing really high. We saw a little bit of not stalled growth, but slower growth for sure, for those reasons.
Yeah. And I would parrot that. I think a lot of the things that I was seeing too, in terms of the legacy software, there were more announcements around legacy software and the support that customers could receive. And while that's great, and we'll probably dive really into this in the predictions call, it's they're falling farther and farther behind, to be frank. And so that's going to tip the scales in the future for us, where we're going to see more of those customers realizing what they actually are going to need out of their ERP in the coming years.
You bet. Actually, Rebekah, another thing that happened this last year that I wasn't expecting, honestly, we have some clients that are on some legacy, say Oracle or other solutions, right? And to convert, to go through an upgrade and everything else it's costly, it's risky, you got to be crazy, all that other stuff, right? And so sometimes it just doesn't make sense to do it. You're not crazy enough, like that Seal song. You're never going to survive unless you get crazy. He should have sang, "You're never going to survive an ERP implementation unless you get a little crazy." But
Yeah.
I'll try to talk to him about that. Maybe we'll have Seal at one of our events one time. That would be pretty cool for people my age. Anyway, just kidding. Huh? Anyway, I know some of the other people are laughing at that one. Okay, but what I was going to go to is to say there was sort of this micro like industry that popped up, which was outsourced support for the apps, not just, hey, we'll support you customer, right? That's of course out there, but like we'll actually take over your maintenance of the legacy systems. Well, those business models are getting shut down. They've been in court for a long time, but things are happening there for sure. So while we've had several customers in the last several years where we've said, don't change, just go with one of these other companies, those companies are shrinking, right? I go back to if you're not going to cloud, right, then you're going to miss out on this next evolution that I actually think is worth all the change. But anyway, that's the last piece I would say there about another kind of a micro trend in 2024.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, just because that reminded me of a couple stories I've read this year, is some of the smaller scale ERP vendors, more the smaller scale, they're not really small, but more the tier twos, they're starting to write integrators for some legacy systems as well, to kind of try and help that transitional piece. And obviously they're not on legacy technology, they're not rewriting the platform, so it's not going to be some seamless transition. But I think they're realizing the need for connectors, the need for these integrations, so that they can kind of start to encourage those legacy customers to move off of the product, especially the smaller companies. That we have companies come to us all the time that they just aren't quite big enough for us to encourage them to move on to an ERP. And frankly, if it's not the right decision, you're putting a company in a hard financial spot where they're spending a ton of money on a piece of software that isn't going to necessarily work for them, or it might work for them years down the line, but it's not right for them now. And so to see some of these other vendors that are trying to service those SMB markets has been really interesting too. I think that they're trying to find a way to get people onto their platforms. Obviously, they're pushing for that, but then also, hey, how can we help customers, and how can we differentiate ourselves so that people want to come to us when they're considering that upgrade?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And again, for people listening to this 2024 trends, either live or as a podcast, like there is a major shift that happened this year, and it's exactly what you said, Rebekah, where the viewpoint of a legacy system has started to change, and kind of the playbook of ERP implementations and migrations has been, okay, we got to get out of the old system and get you into the new one. But maybe there's something in between there where we have an old system, we have pre-built integrations that can go into your new system, or maybe there's some kind of data warehouse piece that's sort of an intermediary. And I mean, we've seen this in large enterprises for years and years and years. We've seen them wrap an old SAP instance with a whole new UI. There's lots of different options, but seeing that come down to the SMB or mid-sized company space is new. There's a lot more innovation with the infrastructure tools for mid-sized organizations than there have ever been, where it is very real that you could have an integration suite that does help with automation between systems. That's we've had Boomi and Celigo and a Jitterbit and some of these other bigger ones. I remember working with Web Methods back in the day, but they're expensive and huge. And those solutions, they're becoming more simple. But I think that was another trend in 2024, is that we're seeing more of those integrations and capabilities for mid-sized companies and organizations.
Yeah, great. And I think that's a good transition into our next question, which is you and I get to dive into those new enhancements and stuff, that technology that we saw this year. So, Shawn, do you want to kick it off, or do you want me to just start rattling off all the things we saw?
No, go ahead.
Wonderful. I think we have to start by the favorite mug in the
I love
office,
that.
in case I'm taking sips while we're talking so much. Some of you on this call might not be old enough to remember Enron, I'm learning.
That's right. Those are
But
good times.
I was also 2 years old, so I can't really
No.
speak.
Yeah.
Um, Anyways, so we've already dove into this, and I think we would be remiss to not really talk about AI and some of the things that we've been seeing this year from the ERP vendors. I know we kicked off the year with a bang. Lots of the vendors were doing a lot of things with NVIDIA. Uh,
Mhm.
excuse me. And they were doing partnerships, trying to enhance the AI solutions. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna have a coughing fit on the call. Sorry, Shawn.
No problem.
But it's NVIDIA was at the center of all of it. And you spoke about this in one of your presentations, the one that you did back in December. We spoke about it at FEI, Financial Executives International. And they've kind of been this linchpin for a lot of the older or the bigger vendors who were trying to jump headfirst into AI. And through that, I think we saw lots of really big, really quick advancements in the beginning of 2024, especially with Microsoft Copilot. They were coming out with a new solution every week, it felt like, where Copilot for retail, Copilot for your ERP, Copilot for Office, different things that they were able to really get from the system, as well as Oracle really seeing how they could embed AI throughout their data, where their databases. And that's really what Oracle is known for anybody who's familiar with the company, is that cybersecurity, the database, those things. And they jumped in headfirst to see the kind of solutions that people could get to use AI within their analytics and access their data and actually do real things with the data that we've had for so many years. And while plenty of companies have had access to that data through data scientists and all these people that could dive in and spend 24 hours a day sifting through the data, it's now becoming more widely accessible to the masses, especially in the SMB space, which is where we play. So those were really exciting innovations just immediately to kick off the year. And lots of that had to do, I would say that none of it really was just being built from the ground up, Shawn. I think a lot of it was through partnerships. A lot of it was through these companies working together in order to offer bigger, better solutions at a quick rate because they knew the competitive advantage they had if they could get them out. What would you say that you saw?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We saw, huge, I think, advancements with Sage. We saw some things coming from some of the other vendors as well this year. There were more practical solutions, which is great. That's like, oh wow, I'm an accountant. How's this going to change my world? And then you see a demo and you're like, oh my gosh, I can actually start focusing on the things that matter more. So I think that was definitely a good one. I mean, we've talked a little bit about um the NVIDIA world is so interesting, right? Because it's about these GPUs, these processing units that have a lot of capability beyond what normal sort of CPUs have. If you want to know more, we can talk offline about that. But the bottom line is, bringing all this processing to bear it's a major game changer. It's actually the equivalent, I think, of what I saw before you were born in the 90s of the internet infrastructure, the cable industry, and Enron's. I worked for a small accounting firm around that same time. And we had a lot of those cable companies, Quest and many others, and telecom companies that were installing fiber around really the world, not just in North America, but around the world, right? I think that's what we're seeing with this physical GPUs kind of coming online, and we're handling all the energy issues that are related to that and the cooling. And sure, let's just build a nuclear plant to support it. So that's another topic. But I mean, this is like it's like go time for sure. And so those little solutions, and even if we go outside of the ERP world for a bit and we look at some of the best of breed solutions that popped up for the office of the CFO or in manufacturing that are AI based, we have a lot more real AI based solutions that are built from the ground up around this concept. And it's different. It is a different way of building apps that takes a mindset that, I think the ERP vendors are retooling their people to understand that. I mean, I was involved in the tools development back in JD Edwards, and the way that we built apps then versus the way that, frankly, the next world people do. It's a lot of the same people that are there now. It's totally different. It's a completely different platform. So, yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Yeah. And speaking of that, it's been incredible. Anybody who's joined these calls for a long time, Shawn, you obviously know my dad is developer, does all of that stuff. And speaking with him and some of his colleagues, they are so excited about the things that
Mm,
we are going to be able to do in terms of developing with AI. And
yeah.
it's going beyond the customers, the outward facing, the people who are seeing ChatGPT or they're rewriting an email with AI. It's at its core. And they're using AI, especially SweetWorld was a great example of this year, where they were talking
Mhm.
about how developers were going to be able to string together code and run it through the system. And then AI would point out any broken code or would point out enhancements or things that they could be doing. And so it doesn't eliminate the need for human intervention, of course. None of the AI we have really eliminates the need for human intervention, but it frees up their time to do the more important things. And we've
Yeah.
been saying that for years, the more value added tasks. And I think we're really reaching a new era where that's going to become more realistic and people can
Well,
start
I,
focusing.
I I agree, and even as we, it's easy to say, hey, let's talk about the future. That's tomorrow. You gotta
It
wait.
is.
Sorry, peeps, you gotta come back for more. But even through, I don't know, it's CES, right? The Consumer Electronics Show with NVIDIA that they presented, and they're talking about these agentic environments, agents, personal agents. Zuckerberg's been talking a lot about this too. You're going to have your own agent to do this, own agent to do that. Like that vision, I think, was sort of a trend in 2024. We haven't realized it yet, but we're right on the maybe call it the razor's edge, right? Of that, where your dad builds you an agent that pulls all the news together, and we have RSS feeds to do stuff like that. That's old actually, but or searches in Google, but can actually process it and say, tell me what the SAP earnings release was for this time last year versus this year versus the year before, right? So that you can, and then graph it and then write some commentary on what's most important here. Like that's there, we're there. You can have your own news agent, that's doing those kinds of things. So, we're that's why I say it was a transition year. We sort of went from a lot of visionary, super high level visionary stuff to like, show me the money. Like again, getting in all the infrastructure, most of the infrastructure is going in place. I still think we have a huge energy situation we have to handle. But going into even the last couple months here, I'm super excited. I think ServiceNow, I think SAP, these larger companies kind of have maybe a little bit more of the wherewithal to invest in that R&D. But we're already seeing N4 working with Amazon, right? I mean, there's a lot of great things that in that collaboration that are occurring there too, that we
Right.
can bring to kind of some legacy manufacturing clients, and not only their model and how they operate is maybe a little bit less modern, but the software solutions that they're on are. So again, this is why I say to everybody who will listen, thank you guys for listening, is it is time on your legacy systems. You better do something about this because it does take a while. It takes a couple years to figure out, oh God, do we have the money? Can we handle all the change management risks? Okay, we can. Great. Now let's go through a selection process. And oh, the vendors are busy and it's our busy season. And whatever happens. And then, okay, fine. We finally get contracts. The contracts are right. Then we got the right terms, blah, blah, blah. Then we go to implementation, which takes a while too. It's a couple year process, So by then, in the way, again, it comes down to show me the money. And the money is flowing into this area. And the people that are flowing in the money don't lose.
Right.
They're almost like, I always think of science fiction writers. Man, this is one of those weird rants, but here I go. Like, if you look at how cars are designed today, what gave these people the idea of how cars should be designed? It was science fiction. It was artists in the 50s, it was George Jetson. Like, what's everything going to look like? It was in the minds of basically these fiction writers. Again, I think the billionaires that are investing today, they have insights into things that maybe we all don't have, but they're creating the future and they're invested in it. They're vested in the investments that they're doing. And it's about time because it's kind of silly that we still go through a lot of crazy things that we do as a society when software can be written like that to get it done and get it in place.
Right. And just we've talked a lot about how software is making everybody's lives easier. But I think I saw the biggest impact with AI through analytics too. And I would
Mhm.
love to talk about that because lots of the vendors were releasing more solutions. NetSuite, their analytics warehouse. I know Infor has a lot with analytics and things that they're trying to do. Epicor released some solutions. I could go on and
Yeah.
on about the vendors that were releasing analytics solutions this year. And I think it was so important. And the more we're talking about technology accessibility and going into different markets, the analytics were not only built to, hey, I can look at my data and better serve my customers. They're also being built for Joe Schmo manufacturer that we work with, that they can see where in their assembly line there's a breakdown and they could fix the problems in order to run their business more efficiently. And
Mhm.
so there's just so much. Technology is so exciting. And these are things that are happening today. They're not thing. And I want to keep reminding people of that. The predictions calls tomorrow, like you said, these are all things that someone could run out and get a tool for right now
Yeah.
and have
Yeah,
it use.
and to your point, we've been talking about these, supply chain visibility. I remember in, oh God, 1996. This was hilarious. This is so funny. We had this exercise at Accenture where we had to all get together as a team and come up with or the coolest IT solution for a company that delivered natural gas. And so this was I was a different person back then, Rebekah. We'll just say that. You can ask Erica. Anyway, she's heard more stories than anybody else will. Anyway, so we come up with this solution and there's this real-time notifications. I mean, the technology barely existed to do it then. It really did. It was all basically a vision. But I came up with the slogan and I said, sit on your ass and we'll send you the gas. And the idea was when the fuel tank went lower, the truck would just show up and would refill it before you even knew it, get you a bill, da 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 da. And that seems like so simple, right? But that was in 1996, and we're really just now beginning to deliver that kind of technology cost effectively,
Yes.
and across all kinds of company sizes, organization sizes, and all kinds of verticals. So those solutions do exist today. And you talk about analytics, and I mean, look, how many conversations do we have to have with prospects that are coming to us saying, "I want a new ERP"? Why? Because I want better analytics. I want better visibility and insight into my business.
Reporting,
Okay.
reporting.
Reporting, right? But but first we have to get, all the transactions kind of cleaned up in all your different systems. Then we have to sort of normalize your master data across those different systems. And then we have to figure out your business processes. And then, okay, finally we're ready to do that. Usually companies, clients are like, by the time they get to the second stage of that, they're like, I'm done. I got to go back, and they get better reporting, but it's not what they really wanted. But I do think that we did see the solutions in 2024 get to a point where they can do more of those out of the box, a lot more pre-configured industry specific solutions or blah, blah, blah. And the last piece on that I would say though is that the interesting thing there is to do better analytics reporting, you need more data, including historical data. So again, I think we're starting to see a shift, or we saw a shift in vendors in 2024 to go more towards, how do we not just do the plumbing solutions, but how can we do the analytics? How can we do the process, the transaction processing, the business process management layer, and then do more analytics. And I mean, again, I think we're really there. Computing and storage, just the storage of data, the prices are just ridiculously low. So it's exciting. Again, it was a transition year, but I think as an industry, we did the right things we needed to do to prepare for what's to come.
Yeah. And I think the vendors were preparing for that in 2023, right? We saw so much data lake, data warehouse, data lake
Yep.
house, data yacht, all the
Yep.
different terms of things coming out.
Yep.
They were preparing for this.
Yeah. I think there
So,
was a data yacht rock, which was a certain kind of music that you listen to when you're building a data lake,
yeah,
data yacht rock,
I,
something like that.
there's a whole community of data, little
Community.
town
That's
that
right.
Oracle's building.
There you go.
Uh, Wonderful. But And I think just the last thing to touch on in terms of the trends for this year would be the industry specific focus. I know from our perspective, we do see very specific industries, legacy software kind of coming to an end. And so they're moving off of that.
Mhm.
In terms of the vendor focus, however, you and I are probably going to have two different viewpoints on the industry focus for the year because the vendors really did focus on retail and healthcare. And it was really interesting to see that boost in those areas. Obviously, certain vendors have that focus, but you saw across the board vendors, Workday, Microsoft, Oracle coming out with retail specific solutions and even
Salesforce. Yeah.
yeah, Salesforce does all of Salesforce is a juggernaut in any
Yep.
space, right?
Yep.
But they were all coming out with retail specific solutions and specifically embedding AI throughout that to help with decision making, better focus on the customers, less wasted resources all around. So while that was the trend out of house, what we were seeing with the vendors, what were you seeing in terms of industry focus this year?
Yeah, like I said, a lot of legacy a lot of legacy industries looking at kind of getting into more modern enterprise software solutions, which was great. Well, I'll talk while you okay?
I'm off camera, Shawn, so if you
I
keep
know
talking, no one else can see me.
it's been a crazy year, hasn't it, with that?
Yeah.
God. But the bigger thing is just the macro. What am I trying to say? How can I say this? There used to be some industries that just could get away with not being as focused on technology. That is not the case anymore. And I think in 2024, some of those, I'll just call them lagging industries, we did see them bite the bullet more. And I think a big factor in that, like you look at like a Procore or CMICs or construction management solutions, they're hard to implement. Everything's hard. But boy, the return on investment, the time to get the solution up and running and get it used in your organization is lower. So it's good. Like it's really, really good. Like you said, we covered a lot about industry specific solutions a couple years ago. We're there. Intact's coming out. Sage Intact's come up with some great industry packages, which is great to see. And now we're getting them in place, and the implementation partners are also doing more industry specific implementation methodologies that I think are helpful too. So that was great. And we're also seeing a lot of implementation partners that are building little solutions, little micro solutions. We used to call them services back in the day when web services was all the talk with the semantic web. But they're little bundles that do very specific functionality, maybe even more horizontal solutions, right? You see a lot of these partners that their whole business model is to build little packages that sit inside of some of these solutions, where the vendor doesn't build certain things. So, real specialty, not just on vertical, but also micro services, with a bank reconciliation or lease management. NetGain comes to mind, Zone and Company in the NetSuite ecosystem, but there's others throughout all the different vendors. I think we've seen that in SAP forever. But you see it even in the tier 2 vendors too. So we went from vertical focus to now these sort of more niche. They're almost like it really is the precursor to the agentic environment. Where so anyway, I won't get into that. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. But there you go.
Yes, we have so many things we're alluding to for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And Shawn, as we're kind of coming to the end of the call, I have a couple more questions for you, but how will 2024 be remembered for ERP?
Well, I think if you're on the sales side, like you're selling software, you'll remember it as a little bit tighter. It was a little bit tighter every year. I think generally, from the industry analyst perspectives, I think they would say good, solid year, good innovation. It was a good year. I think most people would look at it as a good year. Not a great year, not a terrible year, but it was a good year. I think for customers, pricing and the availability of solutions, the availability of implementation resources is good. Maybe some are great for some vendors, the ecosystems, others are small. We're starting to see some of the like the Udos, the Odos, and some of these other things kind of come into the market. There's a lot of advertising that we saw this year, like literally like business to consumer advertising, a lot of golf sponsorships. That we've
Yeah.
seen that before, but a lot more, a lot of NASCAR, Formula One, a lot of airports, our consultants come back from trips like, oh my gosh, we just saw that purple campaign from whoever that was, IFS. I think the vendors are trying to make our space known more too, which is good. I think that's good for everybody.
Yeah. Wonderful. And Shawn, how would you summarize this past year in a word?
And one word for ERP, I would say transition.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, it's a good transition year to go from, again, hey, we got to get in the cloud, we got to get in the cloud, we got to get in the cloud, blah, 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 blah. We've been talking about that for years to, oh, now you got to get AI, now you got to get AI, and now you got to get AI. And there's truth in both of those, and there's value in that. And so I think, just as a little precursor to tomorrow, it still takes a while to meet all the vision and the projections and everything in the science fiction world of the 1950s, even earlier in the 30s. Some of the visions that were written were still not achieving that. But the bottom line is that it was a good year. 2024, I think, was a very good, solid year. I think it made us all a little more real with our expectations in ERP. I think it made the vendors crisp up their business models a little bit. I think the implementation partners had to, there weren't maybe as many projects. So we saw some implementation partners have to shut down, or they had to consolidate to make themselves stronger, get their balance sheet stronger as a services firm. That's vital. Again, infrastructure investments. It was a good, solid Midwestern year. That's how I would say it.
You stole my word because I was going to say realistic.
Oh, that's a
If I
good
had to
one.
summarize it. Because
Yeah.
I had the same feeling just with our clients doing some of the success stories this year, doing some things just across the market, watching what the vendors were doing. I think people going back to Gartner's hype cycle, which we've referenced a
Mhm.
lot this year.
Mhm.
Anybody in the space is familiar with it, but just understanding where technology falls on it. Despite the fact that I think we're still in inflated expectations with AI, I think people are starting to come down to have more realistic expectations about what they're going to be able to do and realizing that in their systems. It's not just going back, it's not a science fiction book. Like, we're not into sci-fi anymore. We're actually seeing what it can do. And we're realizing that our businesses aren't going to be transformed and we're going to be living in a Wall-E like world tomorrow.
Mhm.
So, which is also a warning for anybody who's
There you
seen
go.
Wall-E. So,
Wally.
such a cute kids movie that's also a little terrifying
Great
when you
movie.
actually think about the implications.
That's so true.
But this leaves us a lot to go after for tomorrow's call. So thank you so much, Shawn. This was great as always.
Yeah,
And
you're welcome. Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with everybody. I'm glad you're doing better. Listen, the reality though is there was a lot of complexities. I think our market, there's a lot more intricacies as more people get in and more money comes in. So, we're around to help. And if I were thinking about this, like we did some work on the house, like I'm not going to do that, right? There's no way in heck Erica would ever let me do anything more than check a smoke detector and hang some stuff or whatever, right? We get pros. 2024 and going forward showed me that the importance of getting help, getting the right help, objective, independent help. This isn't a plug for ERP advisors. It kind of is, man, but it's so vital because you can make one decision that just, really puts you in a very bad position for the next decade. You don't have to do that.
yeah, it is a plug. And anybody who is watching after the fact will get a QR code that you can
Good.
scan and come to the website and request a consultation if that's where you're at. I mean, we would love to help you. So that's why we're here. And that's why we put this content out. But thank you again for joining us for today's call and everyone who's on live right now. Please let us know if we can answer any questions you have. Like Shawn said, we're always here to help and we have lots of content. We probably have the content you're looking for the issue that you're facing. And be sure to join us for our next webinar, which is tomorrow. Thursday, January 16th, ERP Trends and Predictions Part 2. This is where Shawn and I will really dive into the ERP market predictions for 2025 and evaluate how these trends are going to impact your business this year. So I would not miss out on that. Please go to our website, erpadvisorsgroup.com, for more details and to register. ERP Advisors Group is one of the country's top independent enterprise software advisory firms. ERP Advisors Group advises mid to large-sized businesses on selecting and implementing business applications from enterprise resource planning, customer relationship management, human capital management, business intelligence, and other enterprise applications, which equate to millions of dollars in software deals each year across many industries. This has been the ERP Advisor. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.